everything about our friendship up to that moment had like flashed in front of my eyes in the way it was flashing my future. And I just like completely started crying and I was like, "Oh my God, you were it."
I'm Emily Calloway, and this is Kismet. Kismet is a podcast featuring your true love stories, and today I'm sharing the love story of India and Alana. Trust me, this is one you won't want to miss, especially the surprise at the end. If you're watching on video, I have pictures of the couple peppered throughout the show. Enjoy. Hello, India. Thank you so much for joining me today on Kismet. How are you doing this Monday afternoon?
It's a good day. It's hot out, but it's good.
Yes. So you're my first guest from Atlanta. So first
Woo.
local guest. So we can talk about the weather, and it's the same weather here. I'm experiencing the same brutal heat, but it is nice outside for sure. And thank you for making time, sort of last minute for this. I wanted to get you and talk about your story while we are still during the month of June for Pride Month. So I'm wearing my rainbow shirt today in celebration. To get started, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, apart from your partnership, just a little bit about you.
My name is India, and I am originally from Mexico. I moved to the US about exactly 11 years ago, actually, now that I think about it. I'm one of those half-breeds, so I'm half American, half Mexican. And I moved to Atlanta for the film industry, but that's not what I do today. I actually work in civic tech as a professional people ops person. I live on the southwest side of Atlanta. My partner and I have 2 dogs, and we own a old 1930s restored home in a historically Black neighborhood. What else do you want to know?
Well, I think that's a great start. I would love now for you to just sort of take us through your journey before meeting your partner. So I know there were like a lot of twists and turns along the way. So just give us some background leading up to that point, sort of where you were in life and, just sort of your relationship with relationships at that point.
Yeah, so I've had quite the journey when it comes to relationships. I come from a background in um, dating men and dating violent and abusive men, and then really being able to find myself connecting with a man who was really lovely, incredibly affirming, and really helped me with my journey. Ended up actually being the person to really coax me into coming out. And so when I think of my history in terms of like where I was relationship wise, it was very dark and then it got very bright and very, very filled with color and rainbow, if you will. And I was able to really come into my most authentic self. And that way I was able to really show up for relationships in the best way possible. And I was married to a woman and found myself in a interesting predicament of being in a not so great marriage. It was a sexless marriage and a not very fulfilling marriage. I was also living in Texas at the time, and it was really difficult to be queer and out and proud in Texas. And it was like the opposite experience that I was having in Atlanta. And I was also rapidly aging, as we all are. And so big decisions were coming up in our conversations in our relationship at the time, or my previous marriage, on whether or not we wanted to have kids and whether or not we wanted to buy a house. And no matter how I looked at it, Emily, it just seemed like a big, strong no, which I thought was problematic. And a lot of my friends who were in their like mid 30s, kind of heading into their 40s, were all either single or married up and starting to have kids. And it felt like I was being left behind, even though I was already married. And I also navigated my life as if I was a single person. Like a lot of the activities and social stuff that I would do. I traveled a lot by myself. Like, my ex-spouse really wasn't present and wasn't interested in being present. So it was
Mm.
problematic many, many
Yeah.
different ways. But that was challenging. It was challenging because you get nervous, right? About getting older and wondering if like this is it or like this should be it since,
Yeah.
as an older 30 something, you're supposed to get married and have children and have, do all the steps.
Right.
Um, but I kept finding myself, and for years, I would buy myself a ticket for my birthday. My birthday's October 7th, and I would come to Atlanta for Pride, which is usually celebrated on National Coming Out Day, which is October 11th.
Mhm.
And so I would, as a birthday present to myself, you'd think that maybe my ex-spouse would have bought the ticket for
Yeah.
me, and they never came. I
Yeah.
always came by myself and always came to Atlanta and had like the best 2 weeks of my life. I was always staying with my chosen family. I was always like, that was my goal throughout the year. I was like working out to look good for Pride. I don't know, saving up my PTO to go to
Yeah.
Pride. Like, whatever it is I was doing in Texas was always geared to how do I make my experience better for Atlanta?
Yeah.
And I thought that was problematic.
Mhm.
um, and my friends were calling it out too. They were like, why doesn't your, current spouse or that's my ex-spouse come? And like, why is there always not an interest in it? And I thought it was difficult to navigate as well. But every time I left Atlanta, I was like, one, why don't I live here? Like, why did
Mhm.
I move? And two, why am I not with someone who like wants to be with me on an
Mhm.
emotional, physical level when there's a sea of prospect candidates that come at me during Pride
Yeah.
but I'm married. So what is this? And so I feel like I had a little bit of an existential crisis right about a year or so before I met my current partner, and the story that I wanna talk to you about.
Yeah.
Because I was feeling really low and pretty, sad about my circumstance. I was married to the wonderful man that I had spoken about earlier, so I had a lot of, like, shame around being a divorcee, but it
Mhm.
almost felt like it was excused by society because there was like a narrative to it, like, "Oh, you're gay, so I guess it's okay that you got a divorce from a man." It still
Right.
didn't make it feel better.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the idea of getting a divorce again also felt like a failure, like a betrayal to myself. Um, I felt a lot of judgment. I was supposed to have come out and found the love of my life as a gay person, only to find myself in a sexless marriage was
Mhm.
embarrassing and depressing.
When you with your prior partner, um, before you married them, was did you have any sort of gut instinct that it wasn't quite right before going through with it? Or
I knew in my gut that I wasn't with the right gender when it came to relationships starting
right.
in my early teens.
Mhm.
But then I found myself in really verbally and physically abusive relationships with men. And I didn't think I was going to live past the age of 22, to be perfectly frank.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
in really intense, deep, really like bad relationships. So when I discovered um, new type of men out there, aka my ex-husband, I was like, "Oh my god, there's hope." But my ex-husband was so healing for me, and he was very open-minded, really well-rounded, really secure, um, an adult. Like, he was able to do his own laundry, cook his own
Mhm.
food, um, and he was very, like, carefree about the world, starting from, like, having tattoos to living in Mexico and traveling the world, and he was really funny and just super nice, and so I was like, "Oh, I guess this is what people are talking about," and I really found my best friend, and the next thing I know, he was down on one knee, and I was like, "Oh, shit, I guess this is what people do now." And so at
Yeah.
that point too, I also had the gut instinct of my response was, "Oh, I guess this is what people do now," not, "Oh my god, I'm so excited to do this with him."
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, I had been working in therapy how to listen to my gut instinct and listen to what I actually want and not just be submissive and not just do whatever I thought my partner wanted because I had been functioning with a lot of PTSD and a lot of fear of if I don't do what they want, something bad will happen.
Mhm.
So Nick was incredibly healing for me, my ex-husband, and he was the one who was like, time out. You actually should probably be dating women.
Yeah.
That's like a whole other story for a different day.
Yeah, yeah.
And if people are interested, I do have a podcast like you, and
Yeah.
I do talk about my coming out story on my podcast. It's called Southern Queries. Queries spelled like queer. But with my ex-wife, um, I thought marriage was gonna fix our sexless marriage. I
Mhm.
thought us going to couples counseling was going to help us get through that hurdle, and I think the opposite happened. I was trying so hard to make it work because I was like, "Oh, no, I'm reaching my early 30s and I'll be in my mid 30s and it's gotta work, right?" And I did all of this and got a divorce from a man and came out as gay and moved to Atlanta and like did all these things to become my more authentic self. And then I was embarrassed that I had actually bumped into the wrong partner again. So there was
Mhm.
a lot of shame at the thought of being divorced twice, but then also extra shame that I hadn't been listening to myself, even though I had been doing all this work. So if you ask me today, I'd probably say, wow, it takes a long time to work through the inner voice that judges us more so than society out there.
Mhm.
So I felt really good, which sounds heartless, but I promise it's not. I felt really good about filing for divorce on my ex-wife because I knew it wasn't authentic to who I was today.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what you've said resonates with me. I feel like in the last few years, I've really come into my own and owned my own voice. A lot of times I just kind of went with the flow. Like it was just easier. I'm sort of a people pleaser. I like to make people happy. That's just who I am innately. But really kind of digging deep into figuring out what I want. And that's like true in relationships as well. And especially like I felt that same sort of pressure getting older. I am still single, so I still feel that, but I guess less pressure and more just sort of trusting that I'm on the right path at this point because of this sort of journey that you're talking about, listening to the gut and just trusting that, like, it's not going to be just any person; it's got to be the right person.
Well, and something I didn't know, because of course you don't know what you don't know, but I
Right.
didn't know how love was supposed to feel until
Mm.
I met my current partner. And I did not know what um, electricity was supposed to feel like. People always talk about like there was so much electricity between us and so much
Yeah.
energy. Um, and I didn't know what I was missing out on until I met my current partner today.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
now let's go into that. So take us into the lead up to meeting your partner and your whole story.
uh, it was so great. So a couple things that happened. I had already made the decision to separate from my, at the time, ex spouse. And we had reached a pretty intense breaking point on communication. We had stopped seeing the couples counselor because I was like, this is not working. And if you can't meet me halfway in the couples counseling, then we're going to have to separate. So those were the conversations that I was having with my spouse at the time. And we were taking a lot of time apart from each other. And so what that looked like is I spent a lot of time here in Atlanta.
Mhm.
And I also spent a lot of my time going to hot yoga religiously, investing in very particular types of friendships, finding my chosen family, and really starting to think about what my life would what was the life I wanted to be living, and not including my spouse in it emotionally, mentally, but also I think physically there was a lot of mobility of me spending less and less time around them and with them. And when we did spend time together, it was like in silence or we were doing some kind of activity with other people. It just was
Mhm.
not a good quality, genuine connection.
Mhm.
But life still happens around you, and, I had a friend who was going to get married, and, um, she had all these activities planned. So, like, there was the bridal shower and the engagement party and there was a garden party, and her fiancé was going to graduate, and there was a graduation there was, like, all these
Wow.
activities leading up to this wedding. And for a while, I'd been hearing about her fiance, soon to be bride, group of friends. And in their group of friends was my current partner, Elena. So I kept hearing from my friend being like, oh my God. And then there's this person and this person. Oh, but Elena. And you and Elena have so much in common. And you and Elena are both Mexican. And you and Elena like to cook. And you and Elena both have dogs. And I was like, I don't know why you're like a campaign ad for Elena. I get it. They sound cool. But like,
Mhm.
when am I going to meet this person so I can make my own judgment? So first I thought it was strange that not only my friend who was about to get married, but then other friends were telling me about and Elena. And I'm like, okay, who is this Elena? Like, in fact, I was getting irritated that I kept showing up to all of these different activities, the bridal shower, the engagement party, and Elena was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Elena was kind of being a hermit and not interested in making new friends. And going to social engagements was like, ugh, the last thing on their mind. Um, so I really do feel like it was a little bit of kismet that we had a lot of anticipation and lead up because we were both
Mhm.
getting advertisements from friends about meeting each other because we
Yeah,
were
I
going
was
to hit
gonna
it
ask
off.
that too, if everyone was telling Elena about meeting you, if they were like, "You have to meet India, she's awesome."
Yes. Partly, I mean, I was also my friend's queer of honor, and I was handling a lot of the activities. But Elena was also hearing about, the other side, two groups of friends kind of merging
Mhm.
together through marriage or a prospect of a wedding is, because there's events that
Yeah,
happen with bridal parties, right?
right.
And everyone was telling Elena, oh, well, India this, and oh, wait until you meet India, and India's so great, and India that. So I think it was interesting that even our friend group were cross promoting each other. And Elena
Mhm.
was like, I'm not looking for a relationship. I am not interested in making new friends. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, my marriage is falling apart. I think divorce is the next step. I like the last thing on my mind is someone else. Because I was thinking about I need to get myself back to Atlanta,
Yeah,
to live my best life and then kinda take it from there.
yeah.
So, there we were up in Blue Ridge, which is the north part of, it's north of Atlanta, kind of touching the Appalachian Trail, beautiful nature, getting ready for this wedding. And it wasn't till the rehearsal dinner that, Elena was 2 hours late because on the way to go to the wedding, the brides had called and said, "Oh my god, we forgot the cake. Go pick up the cake." And Atlanta traffic is brutal, so it took them like forever to get there.
Yeah.
And we were all there, and it's a very small 20-person wedding, and I knew that the one person I hadn't had like laid eyes on was probably going to be Elena. And lo and behold, Elena drove up, jumped out of the car, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm supposed to be the queer of honor and, like, kind of the hostess." So I ran up to Elena and I was like, "Hey, I'm India. tacos over there. I'm sitting over there. You come sit next to me. Because I also am like, oof, it's probably really intimidating to like show up to this wedding, know no
Mhm.
one except the bride and maybe a couple other people, and then be confronted with this giant group of queer people. So that was our first meeting, and they just kind of looked at me with like eyes of a bewilderment, and I just kind of trotted off and waited for them to come join me because there was only one seat that was
Yeah.
empty. That also felt, I don't know, kismet, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, there. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You have perfect timing. We were just getting into your meet cute, so
Yeah, that was a good day. You were already there because you had stayed at the venue that night.
Mhm.
And I came in that morning. I was dressed in my suit and, trying to feel good and confident. It was definitely a very intimidating wedding to be at because it was just all lesbians. Um,
All queers.
yeah, so just trying to like, feel a little bit comfortable. And I noticed that India and one of our other friends, Rachel, were commiserating, and I was like, they're gonna come over here and try to make me feel really nervous. And sure enough, like as I'm having that thought, they turn and walk towards me, and come up, and they're like, "Oh my God, what is this suit made out of?" You know, and Rachel was doing that, and then India, she was like, "Oh my God, this is what her spouse's wedding suit was made out of." She's like, "I think it's the same material. What do you think, India?" And India touched my arm, and I clocked her hand and followed it all the way up and locked eyes with her. And it was like as soon as she touched me, just I was like, what is happening?
And for me, Emily, I don't think I've ever been that taken aback by someone's just like visual. I felt so much electricity coming from me and Elena that I like mildly froze and then was like, I heard my name and turned around and ran off. Because that had never happened to me before.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, our friend Rachel continued to talk to me for like 30 minutes. I have no idea what she said. I feel terrible. I've apologized to her for a few times because I was like, I have no idea what you said to me. I know you were talking to me, but I was just so enamored and trying to figure out what happened. Like what was that? Because you only hear about those kind of connections in the movies and stories, and that's not real.
It's really cool because that's sort of like you said, it is one of those moments you see in the movies or on TV that it's like, "Oh, I think my life just changed." Like I think like, "Oh, okay." So,
Yeah.
what happened from there?
So I think there was a natural gravitational pull
Mhm.
towards each other. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time dancing with each other, finding each other. I had learned that Elena was about to run, or you just ran,
I was about to. I was training to run.
was just about to run the Chicago Marathon.
Oh,
And it was my big goal to run the Chicago Marathon because my grandfather was an avid marathoner. He's from Chicago. My mom was born in Chicago. And my big dream was to run the Chicago Marathon and have him cheer me on. He stopped running marathons at the age of 87, and he had turned 92 that year.
wow.
And he was still running. He was no longer doing marathons, but he was still running. And at that wedding, he actually passed away.
Oh my
Mm.
gosh.
So
Wow. I just got
it
chills.
was,
That was
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I ended up actually becoming the officiant because my best friend, who was also at the wedding, her father, who was also 92, passed away. And so it was like this shifting of roles, and all of a sudden I wasn't in the bar. I mean, I was, but I wasn't. But I was in the bridal party, but then I was the officiant, and I was trying to deal with the grief of my grandfather. And coincidentally, I had met someone who had run the Chicago Marathon, and I was like, "Wait, I think you need to train me. Like, I don't know anything about running. I had been running on and off, like casually on the side since my teens, but Elena really seemed to know what they were doing, or you played it off that way."
Played it off for just for the record. I don't enjoy running. I was running to raise money for an orphanage, and
Oh my
so
gosh.
which then when India was like, "You should train me," I was like, "Absolutely," and inwardly I was like, "We don't like running.
Y-
Why? Like, never in a million years would I have been like,
Things
yeah,
you do for love, right?
yeah." Well, and genuinely, there were just moments like that that would happen where I was like, "We hate doing this." Like,
Yeah.
never in my 39 years have I ever wanted to do this until now. And I was getting up at, like 5 in the morning to go. India would call me, and I would go out for a run, and she would go out for a run in Texas, and we would run
Together.
together.
Amazing.
Um, yeah.
I love that because I mean, one of the things I always think about with relationships is the right partner elevates you and helps you reach your goal and encourages you to be a better version of yourself. And the fact that you connected in that way and like realized this sort of common thread beyond just having these groups of friends and being at this wedding together, this like very sort of important thread of purpose, like wanting
Mm.
to run the marathon to help this orphanage, wanting to, sort of serve your grandfather's memory who passed away coincidentally the same weekend that the two of you
Yeah.
met. Like I don't know, that really does feel like something bigger.
Emily, it just kept happening.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
multiple different circumstances where the universe just kept screaming at us to
Yeah.
be together. So Elena did indeed run the Chicago Marathon.
Mhm.
And the week after, I came to Atlanta, as I usually do, for Pride.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I could be your wing woman. And let's go to a couple Pride events together. And we usually, buy tickets to go to MSR, the big party. My sister's room sponsors it. And then we go to the parade. Sometimes I go and ride with the Dykes on Bikes because my friend is part of Dykes on Bikes. Like, there's all the activities, and it's like this incredible thing. But I really wanted to celebrate Elena running the Chicago Marathon. And I had reached a point in my running where I was no longer huffing and puffing and just listening to Elena talk to me. I was
Mhm.
having a full on conversation with Elena over the phone and running. And I
Wow.
was like, this has never happened to me before. I've never had someone so supportive, cheering me on. I love the idea of working out with a partner. And I would hang up the phone from my runs with Elena and be like smiling like a schoolgirl. And I'm like, do I like Elena? What is happening? And I'm like, no, stop it. You're married. Let's move on. But meanwhile, my marriage was full on falling apart.
Mhm.
And I had reached a point with my ex spouse where I was like, hey, I think I might actually want to spend the holidays not with you or your family. And we need some time apart because this is like furthering not working. And
Mhm.
I need to focus on the Chicago Marathon and focus on my work and focus on like where I want to be and where is it going to be happiness for me. And during Pride, here in Atlanta, Elena and we could not stop giggling.
Yep.
All we did was like hang out with each other and giggle relentlessly. And everyone else around us was like, the fuck is going on? Oh, I'm sorry. Can we swear on this?
It's okay. Yeah. It's totally fine.
Um, and they were like, wow, you guys have so much synergy with each other. And I think people around us were watching the fireworks and we were just enthralled with each other. Nothing happened. We were
Yeah.
just totally, it's like that, I don't know, that scene in the movies where like there's like cheesy music and butterflies are like flying by and everything is
Mhm.
like rose colored glasses. That's kind of what was happening. but we kept looking at each other being like, is this the beginning of like a phenomenal friendship? Or is there something else happening
Yeah.
here?
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those moments too where it was like we went and again, I wasn't looking for a relationship, but was, happy to go out with India. And she was like, I'll be your wing woman. And I was like, okay, like I'm just going to hang out with you. And we walked in and, there's all these women in this room. And she's like, all right, what's your type? And I looked her dead in the eyes and said, you, without skipping a beat.
And I'm like catching my breath because
And
I'm like,
inwardly, I'm panicking because I normally am not that forward
or
at
smooth.
all or smooth ever.
Yeah.
And so again, there were these moments of just these things that were very out of character for who I am typically. And those things would happen and I would leave those moments. And we left that weekend where I had dropped India off at the airport. And we hugged and we'd had a really deep conversation right before that, where she was sharing just kind of what was going on in her life and in her marriage and things like that. And she left and I watched her walk through security and I knew that
Mm.
that she was the one. That she was the one that and everything in my upbringing, everything was like, she's married, don't go there,
Mhm.
don't, because I really do think those things are important. And so I think that was where it was like, there was a lot of conflict for me, but at my core, when I dropped her off that day, I knew she was the one that I was going to be with. And so it was like, all right, I called one of my best friends and was like, who's married, and I was like, this just happened, is like, I need, me better than anyone, like, what do I do? And she was like, look, like, see where the universe takes you, see where things go, and like, don't be persistent, don't be like, just let things happen if they're going to happen, and if they don't, be okay with that. And that was where I was like, all right, and this is someone who values marriage and the
Mhm.
sanctity of it and all of those things. And so when she was like, based on what you're saying, like, see where it goes. And so that was a big turning point for us, for me.
Well, and then we had more turning points, Emily.
Mhm.
The couple who I had helped out for their marriage, officiate their wedding, invited me to come visit them because they had got married, graduated school, and then turned around and left Atlanta and moved to Chicago.
Yep.
And I was like, whoa, things moved real quickly with you two.
Mhm.
And to thank me, she said, why don't you come visit me in Chicago? I'll show you around. We can go visit your grandfather's old apartment. We can look at the course for the run that you're going to be doing in October. Like, I really want to thank you to have like this incredible trip and like I want to show you my new life and world that I'm building. And she knew that I was having a really hard time in my marriage. It was right around Thanksgiving, either before or after. I can't remember the timeline anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever, it was in November.
Mhm.
And 2 days before I was going to fly out to Chicago, she goes, "Oh my God, I have all these dinner plans. I'm so excited." And then you and Elena said that they were going to cook this night. And I was like, whoa, whoa, Elena? And I guess 2 days before, she had convinced Elena and said, "Hey, why don't you come fly out and come visit me? India will also be here."
Yeah.
Oh, so was the bride trying to play matchmaker with the two of you?
She claims she wasn't,
Yeah.
but then she also claimed in the same sentence, and I quote, "No, that's not what I was trying to do, but I wouldn't be mad if you guys ended up together." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?"
Yeah, because neither of us knew that the other was going to be there until like
Yeah.
just before, like, plane tickets had already been purchased, and I just thought I was going to hang out with my friends,
Mhm.
and see that she basically gave me the same spiel of like, we want you to see our new life, and you can help my wife with the chickens and like all of this stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing anything right now. Like,
Well, and then it felt like, what is happening? But also totally exciting because I was like, great, I wanted to see Elena anyway.
Yeah.
We're really good friends. They're training me for the Chicago Marathon. Like, yay, more the merrier.
Yeah. So when you left, Elena said that when you got on that plane, they knew that you were the one. Did you have that same sort of reckoning, or was it still sort of, you knew there was a special connection?
Emily, at the time, I just knew that we were really connected and we had something that was brewing.
Mhm.
But because I was so in the middle of figuring out my current marriage and realizing that it had been falling apart, I don't think I had the mental space
Mhm.
and emotional bandwidth to really think about Elena that way.
Yeah.
However, I did spend my plane ride back just in complete, utter joy at the fact of how much time I was able to spend with Elena. And it was like in small increments. Like, then I saw my, at the time, spouse, and I was like, oh. And like my
Yeah.
whole posture changed. And
Mhm.
then Elena would text me, and I felt like elated. And I, was also trying to be really mindful of there's so much like taboo and like ickiness with like being a married woman and then finding someone else. Like that's not who I am and that's not what I wanted to venture into. And then I was also trying to figure out like I, we need to get a divorce and we need to separate. So
Yeah.
I think deep down inside when I look back at it, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I knew that Elena was gonna be a person in my life the moment that they stepped out of that car, and
Mhm.
showed up at that wedding, to be perfectly honest. There was something about the way Elena's energy showed up that I was like, "Oh, shit. I think I think you're the one that I had actually been waiting for." And then it started happening at us, and what I mean by that is so we're hanging out with our friends in Chicago and we're going to the different neighborhoods and we went to the gay men neighborhood and then we went to the lesbian side of town and we went to this really cute bar and we all decided to get up and get dressed and go out and we're also training in the middle of us visiting and helping them with their chickens and like going to the grocery store and just like chilling, co-working together because we all worked remotely. So there was a lot of like it was just really easy and we went to this bar called My Little Darling, which is a lesbian bar in a Chicago neighborhood. And we were really excited to go to a lesbian bar because they're dying out. And our friends were newlyweds and then started making out in a corner and we're awkwardly like, well, I
we'll,
guess
we'll go
we'll go
around. Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So we went to the other side of the bar and we were hanging out and talking, but Elena and I are like getting lost in each other's eyes. And I guess like we're inching closer to each other without like intentionally wanting to do like there wasn't an intention to it, but all of a
It's just
sudden
gravity.
it was just gravity.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I felt the cold like wall behind my back and I was like, oh, I actually am okay with this. And out of nowhere, this woman who was a guest watching us for a while came up to us on her way out of the bar and like kind of like sticks her hand in the middle of us and then puts her arm around Elena and goes, just say yes, and looks at me.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Wow.
And she goes, I said yes to my wife 25 years ago. So just say yes.
Yeah.
And walks out of the bar with her wife.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Elena and I are like sitting there holding our drinks and we're like, did that just happen?
Yeah.
So we joke that that was a turning point when we started seeing it. Other people started saying it to us. Like we got into the Uber and the Uber driver was like, you guys are such a cute couple. And I'm like, we're not even fucking touching each other.
Yeah, and we weren't dating, we hadn't had any, I
Mhm.
mean, we had been talking more about, I was trying to show up for India because I knew where she was at was not a good spot to be, not a fun spot to be, and so, and I think we had at that point kind of briefly touched on like what if, and but then it was like no, like you need to focus on where you're at, like I'm here as a friend, and acknowledging that, and then we kept having moments like that where someone would be like, just say yes, or like you guys
Mm.
are like an incredible couple, or
Or we'd like brush up against each other and both of us would be like,
It
Wow,
was
did you
just
feel that?
yeah, like butterflies all the time and electricity all the time. And yeah, and I think the other thing too is like the more we talked, the more we realized how much our values aligned and how we made decisions in really similar ways, and how we also our differences complemented each other.
Like,
Um,
radically complemented each other.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then yeah, like our backgrounds and things like that, seeing even though we both have very different backgrounds, it also like again, it just continued to complement each other, and there kept being those like we kept waiting to find red flags, or like, because every relationship for me up to that point, there were always red flags, if not, bright orange ones. Like
Mhm.
there was never not a flag. And so I kept waiting for that to happen. I kept waiting for those flags to show up of like, ooh, this probably isn't like, or and having to like get to a place where I was like, am I willing to reconcile if, there's only 5 out of the 10 things that I are non-negotiables for
Mhm.
me? Is that okay? Because, I'm older than India. I'll be 40 next year. And so just trying to again find the person where it's like okay, do I settle, and resolving that I didn't want to, but also pleasantly surprised that every time we talked there was just more green flags.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'd like to also call out is your patience, like that you let this, I mean, allowed for the space for this friendship to really kind of flourish. A lot of people are like, "Oh, well, you know, India can't be there for me in the way that I would like her to be at this moment, so I'm just going to like write her off." But you were a friend. You didn't push her. You didn't
Yeah.
make her feel like she was in an unsafe place or anything like that. Like
Yeah.
you gave her that space to sort of realize what she wanted and go through the things that she needed to go through before she could be with you in the relationship you have now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so fast forward, I, asked Elena to fly out and meet me in San Francisco. I was there for a leadership retreat, at my company, and I was like, "Do you wanna fly halfway across the country and come hang out with me in San Francisco?" And Elena said, "Yes." And you literally only had, like, 48 hours.
Not even.
Not even,
And
less.
that's a
Yeah,
long trip for 48 hours.
it
Yeah.
was.
It was.
And it was like the cheapest flight I could get, so my travel day was like 4 days for 1 day with
Yes, it really was. And we said, this might actually be a handshake and not of, "Oh my god, I found my person." And we had talked about it earlier. I'm like, "Well, look, if you come here and, like, things one thing leads to another, we might be like, 'Ew, no, we should just be friends,' or this is it."
Mhm.
yeah.
Um, and Elena arrived kind of in the evening, like,
Yeah, it was
late
like
into the
it was
evening.
8:30.
And I was staying at this little cute family-owned boutique hotel up, around Fisherman's Wharf, and, Elena texted me that they were outside, and so I walked. It's like a no elevator, kind of tiny little
Yeah.
stairs, hotel goes all the way up. So I walked down the stairs, and I saw Elena at the top of the door, there's a window, and I saw Elena, like, dashingly super handsome, leaning against their suitcase, looking out to the side, and my heart dropped, and I was like, "I think I'm totally madly in love with Elena."
Oh.
Um, and for Elena,
It was the same thing. I saw her coming down the stairs and just like started like trembling because I was just so nervous that, I was like, what if this is just a handshake? And I was wrong.
Yeah.
All of the signs, all of the thoughts, like it was just fairy tale. It was just fluff.
Yeah.
And but was like deeply, deeply hopeful.
so do you want me to tell this part or do you want to tell
You
this
go for
part?
it.
So, I opened the door and Elena and I embraced, and I could tell both of us were shaking because we were just, I mean, the anticipation had like really grown. And Um, we just like could not help ourselves. And I kept waiting for Elena to like make the first move, but nothing happened. And so I was like, fine, well, let's take your suitcase upstairs. I'm sure you're starving. Like, let's go get some dinner. There's the hotel's like right in between Italy and Chinatown. And it's like this clash of cultures, and there's like amazing food down there. And I was like, okay, let's go. And we trudge up the suitcase 3 flights of stairs. And meanwhile, Elena's like huffing and puffing and
I
so
have asthma.
nervous.
So I was having a hard time breathing.
Oh,
And so
why?
we get to the room and we put the suitcases down, and I look at Elena, and Elena's like looking at this room,
I'm just
pacing.
trying to slow my breathing back down
Mm.
so that I can, like, talk normally and, like, be cool.
And I'm like, I think you're taking too long. And I just went for it and went in for the kiss. And it really was like the entire world stopped.
Yeah.
And we were like floating. And then I realized Elena was like shaking.
I had to, like, we had our first kiss, and I immediately had to pull out my inhaler and, like,
I
take
was
a
gonna
hit from
ask.
it. It was
Yeah.
the least cool thing I could have done in that moment. But I was like, "It's this or I'm gonna pass out," so
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, that probably didn't help you with catching your breath, having this, like,
not at all, not at
moment.
all. Yeah, it definitely took my breath away and in all the
Oh,
best ways, and then, the medically the medical ways too, I had already lost my breath, so,
Yeah.
um
And on that trip, Emily, that's when I had a conversation with myself, and knew that Elena was the one. Um, we had an incredible dinner, an incredible night. The next morning, somehow I convinced Elena to go on a run with me, to continue our training, uh, down to the pier. And Elena was like the sexiest thing I had ever seen, with their wind hitting their hair and running with me down at the cool air of San Francisco. We turn and we're running down this pier, and Elena goes, I'll race you to the end. And Elena fucking books it. I've never seen someone run so fast. And I'm running as fast as I possibly can, and I'm not gaining any inch, but I can hear the thumping of my feet against the wood, like washed rain, seawater, crunchy, like what are they called? Wooden
the
boards,
boardwalk, yeah.
of the boardwalk, and there's no one else on this boardwalk. Um, and if they were, I did not see them. And we hit the very end of the boardwalk, and I'm out of breath because I'm trying to catch up to Elena, and I'm trying to like get my breathing under control. And I don't know if you've ever been to California or to San
oh,
Francisco
I
specifically.
lived in LA for a decade, and, some of my best friends live in San Francisco, so I've been up there a lot.
Awesome. Well, so when it's cloudy, it's like very cloudy, but at
Yeah.
that exact moment, I kid you not, but the like clouds part and there's a little bit of a sun ray coming down. So it's like hitting the water in this beautiful way. I can see out for as far as I can see is like blue, and then some of the like little islands off in the distance. And Elena comes around behind me. And so Elena's arms are like wrapped behind me, and I'm squished up against the pier. And Elena just whispers to me, it's okay. Take your breathing in and out. And I had this flash of, this is the type of partner I want to have if I'm ever giving birth. Someone
Mm.
who's supportive, someone who helps me regulate when I'm dysregulated, someone who's strong, fast. Like everything about our friendship up to that moment had like flashed in front of my eyes in the way it was flashing my future. And I just like completely started crying, and I was like, "Oh my god, you were it." So that was a
My god, you're
big
gonna make me
moment.
cry. I seriously, like, that's powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it started to rain.
Yep.
Wow.
We walked back, towards the hotel. We went to go grab breakfast, but we walked back in the rain just floating. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think both of us were
We held hands, we went to a coffee shop, we went to a bookstore, we
Grabbed a book.
grabbed a book, went to the park and like wrapped around each other on this bench, reading books and drinking coffee and like basting in the sun. And I was like, I don't think I have felt this comfortable, not only in my body and this strong and this fit, but also this attracted and so safe and so warm and so sexy. And like, it just felt like home.
Yeah.
And I had never felt that before. And as I said to you earlier, I didn't know what I didn't know until it hit me dramatically out of breath in California. And I knew that my life in Atlanta would never be the same. And Elena and I were really trying to be extremely intentional and thoughtful about starting a relationship because I knew that my divorce was tumultuous. I was very upset and sad to learn that my ex decided to be incredibly mean.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
petty, mean,
Mhm.
and she wasn't gonna make it easy.
Mhm.
So the divorce was tough.
Yeah.
And Elena showed the fuck up as a friend, as my confidant, as a guide, as my coach, and as my partner. And we fell madly in love. And Emily, this past weekend, Elena surprised me and proposed.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And so we were laughing.
Wow.
I was like, is it kismet that you proposed and now we have a podcast episode talking about our love? What is this?
I mean, I could seriously though, when you were talking about the sparks and the fireworks, like I can see it from here, through a digital screen. It's all very apparent, this like love and devotion and chemistry and all the things that you have. And just hearing your story has been amazing. And then like, wow, engaged. So
Yeah.
awesome.
So I feel like I jumped a whole lot, but really the divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was so great. And Elena really showed up as my friend and really showed up as someone to support me through it. And it just kind of fell into place for us to start a relationship. And we bought a house last year.
Right after we both completed the Chicago Marathon, my second, her first.
And then, yeah, we got back from the Chicago Marathon and
Closed on the house and
closed on
moved.
the house and moved. Emily, it just keeps happening. The just say yes just kept showing up. And even when I met my real estate agent, turns out that she's a gay woman. Turns out she had a whole like journey to tell us. But when she walked into this house, she goes, India, just say yes. I was like, what the fuck? This is clearly
Wow.
something
Yeah.
that's showing up in our lives.
Yeah, the universe keeps screaming, so we do our best to lean into that.
If y'all ever write a book, you have a title.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So when I saw your post about looking for people to come onto your podcast, I was like,
Just say
Just say
yes.
yes. This is our motto.
Yes, I love it. I mean, the whole podcast is also kismet, like how the universe is conspiring, and y'all are a great example of that, from the sort of misconnections at the beginning and like all these friend groups trying to get you together and all of this sort of, to the woman in the bar saying, just say yes. Like it just seems like it was meant to be. I would love to hear your advice for singles that are out there who are still looking for their person and perhaps are, going through the same journeys that you both have been on, trying to find themselves, trying to find their partner.
Ooh, what a great question. I feel like you and I might answer this very differently.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think the best advice that I can offer is don't settle. The right person is out there, and they will find you when it is the right time and when you are in the best space. And until then, be kind to yourself. Be intentional with yourself, with building your community, and with being willing to take a chance if something, you get that little nudge of, this might be it. See what's out there. But until you find that person, yeah, just be kind to yourself.
My best advice is be really excited about your life and romanticize fucking everything. Romanticize learning how to listen to your gut, romanticize working out, taking care of yourself, mental health, wellness, whatever that looks like for you. Because if you're living in a space where you're like really trying to find you and loving yourself, and like my example of being someone who was in a marriage that wasn't working, doing all those hot yoga classes and like going to places that brought me joy only brought me closer to the person that I was meant to be with. And even though my situation really sucked and divorce sucks, it's still the goal was I wanted to live in a cute 1930s bungalow style home in Atlanta. I was going for all the romantic things, and romance found me there in between. But I think it's imperative also to have a really good support system in your community. So one of the things I asked my best friends, given my history and my background, was check on me. And especially because I was well aware that I was going from a marriage into another relationship in a very short period of time, I told my friends, look out for my red flags. If I stop talking to you, or I'm not working out, or I miss our hangouts, or I'm vague about my new incoming relationship, you know that that's a red flag. Not so much that my partner is a red flag, but India's not doing herself justice and good service. So my best advice is make sure that you have a fantastic relationship with yourself and you're prioritizing loving yourself before you can love someone else. And I think the journey of really making sure that I was creating this romantic life fell into place with the other person. Because if I was just seeking that one person to marry, because I see it with my other friends, they're like desperately looking for their wife, desperately looking for their husband. The desperation attracts the wrong kind of people. But if you're focused on creating a romantic life for yourself and really enjoying you, then that person is going to show up.
Think that is incredible advice, really, really good advice. And I love, just thinking about your story about how you'd already made the decision that you wanted to move back to Atlanta. You already, you were investing in your relationships there. And you were doing this, before you met Elena, like having this sort of centered idea of where you were going next. You were sure that this was where you're going. You weren't moving for someone, you were moving for yourself, and that was your joy. And then you met the perfect person for you along the way. So I think that's an important takeaway also.
Yeah. I hope that other people listening to your podcast also remember to think about their friends usually know what type of person you should end up with. And so I do think our friends, like Emily, it doesn't matter who you talk to in our life, they go, oh, India and Elena ended up together. Of course. Makes total sense. So don't take for granted your bestie who's like, maybe you should consider that person again, because they're out there. And I know that dating via the internet is hard, but there is something to be said about meeting folk organically.
Yeah. I think that's great advice as well. My best friend actually, when she got married, I gave the maid of honor speech. And I said, I knew that her partner was the person for her before they knew, because I saw how he brought out the best in her. Like she changed and just Rose had the best version of herself. And I think that there is really something to that. Your friends can see who brings out your shine and who will love you in the way that they love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really particular thing also why I mentioned, like, my friends, where I was like, you want to see your friend change for the better, not for the
Mhm.
worse. If you see your friend cutting you off or cutting off their family, moving away, getting isolated, red flag.
Yeah.
So have your friends be your helpers and
Compass.
lean on, yeah,
Yeah.
and lean on your community. And I really cannot overemphasize, y'all, when we say electricity in the world stops, we mean it.
Mhm.
Don't pretend that that's what's happening. When it happens to you, you'll feel it. You'll literally touch each other, like when you touch fabric and then it like
The
stings
shock.
you, the
Mhm.
shocks you. That's what it feels like,
Yeah.
but with endorphins
Mhm.
in the
Yeah.
best way possible.
Yeah. And we're 3 years in and it still feels that way, and yeah, things are still incredible. The newness hasn't worn off. So
Yeah. And
uh,
the yeses keep coming.
yeah.
Well, that is definitely something to aspire to. So I definitely hope I have some of that in my future as well. So before we wrap up today, I'd love to tell people how they can connect with you. So I know you're talking a little bit about your podcast. So if you want to share any more information about that, how people can connect with you or reach you, now's the time.
Yes, people can find me on Instagram under Southern Queries. They can also find me with just my name and my Southern Queries, like co-hosting voice, India Bastien. It's on Instagram. You can also find us on www.southernqueries.com and listen to our podcasts anywhere you can get your podcasts: Pandora, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, you name it. And then hopefully, Emily, you'll link it in the chat notes. And if you're
Absolutely.
interested in talking about civic tech, you can find me on LinkedIn. Also under India Bastien. And Elena, you can find through me.
Yep.
You're not really on social
Yeah, I was like,
media.
I'm not really out there. So, but yeah, if anyone wants to reach out directly, yeah, find India and she'll get it to me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining me today. I loved hearing your story. I got goosebumps multiple times during this. So, just a really beautiful story, and I know a lot of people are going to resonate with it. So, thank you for being vulnerable and open and sharing your joy and your experience with all of us.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
thank
Emily.
you.
Thank you for tuning in to Kismet. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you have your own Kismet story you'd like to share, you can email me at kismetstoriespodcast@gmail.com or connect with me on Instagram at Kismet Stories Podcast. Until next time, be bold, be kind, and be open to everyday magic, because your partner might be just down the street, or they might be that elusive person your friend keeps wanting you to meet. Just say yes.